Hello. Hi.
Hi, Jenny.
Are you meant to really hear me? Okay, you are. That's good. Fine. Stop. Now.
Hi, Sean.
See? All right. Well, you can probably see me, but not totally. Hello.
Hi.
Well, I can see Jacob. I can't see Zinyi, but if Jacob can see Zinyi, then I guess that works.
Well, you get to see us alternately. I think that's the deal.
Well, even when I click on Zinyi's avatar, I see Zinyi's avatar.
Wait, what? But I see me.
Okay, maybe Jitsi is weird. Okay, so Jacob, you say use screen sharing sounds easiest, and if I'm able to come a few minutes early, then we will be able to sort stuff out. I don't know whether 1 minute early is a few minutes early. Sorry about that. But what do we need to sort out? Did Jacob hear me?
Sorry, just fiddling with my volumes. Too many different microphones and audio things at various degrees of lag. It's a very confusing.
Okay.
Okay. Just on a technical note, if you stop being able to hear us or it seems like something has gone wrong, please send a message in the chat and we'll try and do something. As I can't listen to myself simultaneously on two different sources because it will drive me insane.
Really? I thought Jacob could do everything.
I mean, I could do it, but it would drive me insane. It's a case of one trying to.
Well, we have to maintain priorities.
Okay, so in terms of presenting, there's no obvious way I can see to present the PowerPoint thing. So perhaps if we just send out a link to it and then everyone sort of follows along inside the document.
No, I can just screen share on this thing.
Oh, you can screen share? Oh, I don't see how. Okay, you.
You hover over it, and then at the top, on the little bar at the top, there's the stop screen sharing.
I see. Okay, let's see what this does. Add extension. Okay. Okay. So that look okay?
Well, that looks like me. Yeah, that looks like a screen share.
Okay. So welcome everyone to the RP All Hands. We're going to have a couple of talks. The majority of the time will be Sean, who's going to be talking about a lot of work we've been doing on creating content, especially focusing on mathematical content and on then sort of getting students who want to use the content. And that also gives us feedback. So, and then Zinyu will talk about some technical work we're going to be doing to add a question system to supplement the exploration editor. And then we will have a Q&A. As of my last checking, there were no Q&A questions, which is kind of sad. So if you think of a question, then please just drop it in the chat on YouTube or on Gitter, and then we'll reply. Okay, over to you, Sean.
Hello, everyone. Before I get started telling you about all the content and stuff, let me just give a quick update. We've, since the last All Hands, which was in May 2016, we tried to have these. We used to have these All Hands once a quarter, and then they became very big. So we ended up having them at a cadence of about once every 6 months. And since the last All Hands in May, we've had at least 36 or 37 new contributors join the project. Here you can see some of them. They were the ones whose photos I was able to find. So welcome everyone who's new, especially if you're watching. Opia is a community built on a lot of different people's efforts around the world, and it's really cool to see a lot of people working together to make education better. So let's see, next slide. So yeah, and I also wanted to give a welcome to our newest maintainer, Prasanna, who is currently leading, not only maintaining, but also leading the email project. We have a small team of maintainers who help to keep the code base in order and make sure that, get triaged and PRs get reviewed and things just keep moving. So thank you to all of them, and also welcome to our new, welcome Prasanna. All right, so let me also give a very quick update on what people are working on, because it's likely, I think, that some of you might be working on individual areas of the code base and lack some visibility into what's going on in general. So I thought I'd present a few highlights very quickly, but this is just a small sample of the different things that are going on. One of the things that's going on is a redesign of the collection learner view. So around May, we introduced collections, which allow people to bundle lessons together in a chain, so that they form more of a pathway for students and are less of this, individual isolated thing. And the current collection learner view, it's functional, but it doesn't sort of have this nice, happy feeling of a path that you can walk down. And so there's a design effort underway by Kevin Thomas, Mark Halpin, and to try and revamp this page and make it look better. The next thing people are working on is the Simple editor, which is a large project that aims to make a version of the editor that's easy for first-timers. So as you know, our current editor has, you're basically constructing a graph, a conversational graph. And for new people, they are more used to creating linear things. And actually, we do encourage people to start creating explorations by creating linear things, and then adding feedback and adding loops and adding branching. One can add all that later. But it's easier to get the story of the exploration down first. Start with the first question and sort of work your way all the way down to the end, and make sure that the core story is tight and good. And then after that, you can add additional loops and additional feedback, but doing it in that order stops the complexity from getting too high. So we want to try and design a first pass at the editor that encourages this sort of workflow. And so Hamza Chandan is the main person working on this at the moment. Then another thing I wanted to highlight was subscriptions. This is an example of a project that one of our contributors, Arnab Ghosh, suggested. He, as a creator, he thought that it would be nice if students were able to subscribe to creators and get notified when a creator publishes a new exploration, because it's likely that the creator they subscribe to produces stuff that is useful for them. So this very much fits in with creating good lessons and telling students about them. And so he's currently working on a design doc for it and plans to be coding it up soon. And this is an example of a project that's didn't really occur to any of us until Arunab suggested it. So if you have ideas for how to make things better, you're absolutely welcome to suggest them. And if they're concrete enough and if they make sense, then we can absolutely do them. They should just tie to our core mission, which is to make it possible for anyone to learn anything they want to in a way that's effective and enjoyable. And as long as it relates to that, we can look into doing it. And finally, a very exciting project is machine learning and answer classification, which Anmol Shukla and Yang Lu are currently working on. And the idea here is to try and bring machine learning into the system so that we can classify free text responses and maybe later code snippet responses, classify answers that we do not, we've never seen before, or that the creator has not seen before, but that we want to give some of the existing feedback to. Because that way you don't have to like make manual rules for these complex types of student answers. You can try and deduce what the responses should be. So that's currently underway, and we are starting to get that into the system. Okay, if you want more info on all the various projects that are going on, we do have a GitHub link. We do have some projects that are not reflected on that link, but that's because they don't have project leads yet. And as we start defining more of these, we'll continue adding them to the link. Yep.
There's a slight problem. I think the screen isn't being shared, so screen share instead. I think that there's something going on where the person speaking automatically has the.
Okay. So basically, you're all seeing my face, and you've got no idea what I'm showing. Yep, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. Let me reject this. All right. So since you didn't see the previous slides, a very quick run through. This is a panoply of some of our new contributors. This is me just saying that I couldn't find their photos. This is Prasanna, our newest maintainer. This is a screenshot of the collections learner view that we are working on redesigning. And this is the same for the simple editor. The navbar and so on are, just placeholders, but you can see that the main flow is linear. This is a screenshot of what the subscriptions functionality might look like. And this is a complex flowchart of how machine learning fits in with the other types of rules in the system. And this is the link I was referring to. Thank you, Cindy. That shows the different projects that are available and that people are currently working on. All right, so now let's step back a little bit, because what I want to go back to is why we are doing all this. We are doing a lot of great technical, interesting technical stuff, but I wanted to tie things back to OPIA's long-term aim, which is we want to make it possible in general for people to learn anything they want to in an effective and enjoyable way. And this one step of this entails building a site where people can create lessons for other people. But that, of course, does not target effective and enjoyable directly. It does mean that anyone can create lessons, and it's a pathway towards anyone being able to learn. Hopefully someone out there can create a lesson that satisfies that person's need. But we need to go further than just building a site. And what I want to tell you about now is some of our efforts to create lessons and to distribute these lessons to students. And so you don't really want to start by starting from that mission statement and trying to achieve it all in one go, because it's like trying to boil the ocean a little bit. And the concern is that if we, start on the goal of, creating lessons in general across the spectrum, then that's you're going to kind of make incremental progress in a lot of areas. So while this is absolutely the long-term aim of the site, it seems better to have a shorter-term aim, which is more specific, which has a specific audience and which has a specific subject, so that we can test the effective and enjoyable bits, which are actually really quite hard to do in online education. And so the general idea is, let's start with a pilot where we take a specific target audience and create some specific lessons, and let's just iterate until we understand and can disseminate how to create effective lessons and how to make sure they're enjoyable, and try to make that as not quite automatic, but as streamlined as possible, so that when people create lessons, they're likely to be following best practices. But before that, we need to know what those best practices are, and we also need to make sure that, although research says that active learning with feedback and doing things, that's very beneficial, that actually is much better than lectures, because lectures you just sort of sit there. We should actually test it out and make sure that we can support saying that this is an effective way to create lessons. Do it like this, and students will learn. So the first thing we wanted to do was to figure out what subject we should teach. And when we were thinking about what subject to start with, we were looking at maybe mathematics, maybe computer science, and we had kind of a largish discussion about this, and decided that computer science at the moment is kind of it's fairly well served. There's a lot of sites online teaching computer science. There's a lot of places that are offering free programming lessons and so on. Whereas something like mathematics, there are still places which don't. So also, firstly, the audience is large. Pretty much all students take mathematics at some point in their lives. It's a known problem. Students still struggle with mathematics, and in some places, I've heard that the fail rate for mathematics is like 80 to 90%. And part of this is attributable to a lack of textbooks and a lack of qualified teachers. And so mathematics actually seems to be a larger problem in the grand scale of things. And so one of the things we'd like to start with is anyone can learn basic mathematics. So up to pre-algebra, right? Stuff that you can actually use as an adult in an effective and enjoyable way. And also in terms of anyone, we really do mean anyone, but there are some people who have fewer resources than others, and so are likely to have more difficulty. So let's start with the students who lack access to such resources, either in the form of textbooks or qualified teachers, or other sorts of support. And so the intermediate aim that we are going with is to try and create a set of mathematics lessons covering things like fractions, decimals, percentages, negative numbers, measurements, and of course the counting numbers. And sort of just basic mathematics that you use in like trades and in like simple business applications and so on, and make sure that it's possible for students to effectively learn their knowledge. And that's what we are doing, has a real world impact on lots and lots of students. To give you some idea of the problem, here are some charts I pulled from the internet. You can see that some places the teacher comes in and attends only some of the lessons, or maybe I've heard stories of teachers coming in and attending a lesson for maybe a day and then being absent the rest of the week. And many students don't progress to mathematics or to anything really beyond primary school. And so having some having some sort of solution that scales because it's on the internet and that any student can access at any time. If it's a good solution and if it works well, especially in low bandwidth situations, that could help a lot of people. So one of the things I want to point out is that this is just the mathematics lessons for students who lack access to resources. Is actually just it's a short-term goal. It's a first step. It's still on the way to the long-term goal, and it does not mean that the site from now on is focused only on mathematics. It does not mean anything like that. It's just a first step towards making sure that we can have a way to create good and reliably good lessons, because once we have that, we can start extending the same principles and the same principles of teaching and so on to other topics like physics and other topics in mathematics as well as other diverse subjects. Just try to figure out principles of teaching while we are doing this that apply generally. So, for example, one I've heard is to try and make lessons concrete, to make sure that they tie into the students' mental models of things, and to also be very clear with the students about why they are learning something and how it relates to what they already know. And there are other things that we try and do. We try and have each lesson focus around a single simple idea, and ideally we try to introduce unexpectedness and storylines so that students realize, oh, this is not as straightforward or as boring as I thought, and engage a little more, and hopefully the lesson becomes more effective that way. So you're trying to discover and validate some of these principles, and we are entering a stage where we are creating a set of lessons and iterating on them and trying to make them better until, for example, we find that 3 students in a row who don't actually understand the topic play the lesson and develop an understanding of it. That is a good understanding of it. And that means their misconceptions are addressed. That means they can answer questions on the topic that they haven't seen before at the end. Then we know that this is the time to open up to a very wide audience. Because if it works for 3 students without intervention, then it should probably work for others. And so what I was talking about is the feedback and iteration loop, which is actually fairly unique to Oppia. I mean, if you put a video out online and lecture about mathematics or something, it may be a very good video. It may not, and people may like it, and they may not. But you can't really tell if you've got the lesson being effective or not. Whereas with Oppia, you know what the students are answering, and you know where the misconceptions are. You can address them, and you can improve the lesson based on what you see. When you are the other thing that we found is that just liking a lesson does not equate to the lesson being effective. We actually did a study some time ago with a computer science lesson, and we found that the enjoyment scores and the satisfaction scores were not actually that correlated. The enjoyment scores and the effectiveness scores were not actually that correlated. And I remember someone telling me about a study where they taught a physics concept, and I think I may be garbling this slightly, but I think they did 2 experiments. The first was to get students to watch a video of someone explaining the concept in a very clear way, and the students really liked the explanation, and they thought it was very intuitive and very understandable, and then they answered the test questions at the end wrongly. And then there's the flip side of the explanation requiring students to think a little bit. And students reported being a bit more confused and it wasn't so clear, but they did better in the questions. So it's not just because an exploration got 5 stars does not necessarily mean that it's actually helping students learn effectively. We need to put in more measures in place to ensure that that's the case, and Cindy will be talking about that in a little bit. But first, let me go over quickly ways that you can help if you're interested in this initiative, because it's something that we haven't actually gotten around yet to putting up on the Oppia site and actually telling people this is what we are doing. One of the ways you could help is by testing lessons, because that's an easy, lightweight way to give feedback and to make sure that obvious bugs and obvious issues are found. Right? Students really want to be good at something, but if they get stuck on a particular question, or if something isn't clear, or if they don't know what to do, or if they have they think they are they've got the right idea, but nothing they try is working. These are all moments of frustration. And if you get enough moments of frustration, you stop, you kind of don't want to learn anymore, or you don't want to do this anymore. Because you don't know, for example, whether it's you or whether it's the system. And we want to be a supportive tutor, and supportive tutors don't just sort of sit back and do nothing while the student is struggling with something. So if you would like to help with testing existing lessons, reporting places where you get stuck, reporting things you like so that we can note them down for the creators to use, then you'd be very welcome, and please let me know. A second thing that you might be interested in is creating lessons. There are people creating lessons on things like fractions and decimals and negative numbers, and in fact, stuff beyond basic mathematics like introduction to algorithms, circles, and so on. But we've got a lot of different things to teach, and if you have to teach, again, please come and let us know, and let's all do it together. The third thing is getting others involved. So one of the if we create a lot of lessons, and if we test a lot of lessons, and we make a beautiful website, it doesn't mean very much if students are not learning from it. And so finding ways to reach students who may need that help, and possibly conduit students, such as teachers who might want to use a lesson in their classroom, or organizations who might want to use a lesson on a broader scale, could be useful. So for example, this year, Opia is actually going to be featured on Hour of Code. You can see the little otter at the bottom left of the search page. Hour of Code is part of CS Education Week, which takes place December 5 to 9, and encourages students to, do an hour of coding. And there are lots and lots of different activities involved that allow you to, learn coding, some of which are lesson plans, some of which are activities you can play standalone. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to check out their site at code.org. It's learn.code.org, I think. And yeah, Programming with Carla, one of the explorations we have, is going to be featured on that this year. We would like to distribute lessons to students, especially students who are in need. So if you know anyone in your communities who who has trouble learning something, and there's a lot, and it may be one person or there may be lots of them, then let us know, and we can see if we can prioritize that in terms of lessons we create, because we want what we create to be useful. And of course, I want to highlight some of our creators. That's Pratik, who's making a lesson on fractions, Naveen, who's making one on money, and Cafe, who's making one on negative numbers. And if you know people who are interested in teaching and creating scalable lessons for the world at large, who would like to help out with this effort of improving education generally, it would be great if you could connect them with the project. And finally, coordination. Another way to help is by helping to organize some of the above, because there's a fair amount of logistics that's needed in order to put this plan into action. And I think it's kind of hard for a small group of people to do it on their own. So the more hands, the better. And if you're interested in taking an organizational role in any of this, you'd also be very welcome. And last but not least, improving and maintaining the site, which many of you are already doing, because we have to ensure that the site is not slow. We've got to ensure that it's accessible on mobile devices, because this is what many students have access to only. And we've got to make sure that people aren't getting stuck in terms of understanding how to find lessons, playing through a lesson, creating a lesson, and so on. So there, most of the functionality that we need is already there, but it's important to make sure that the user journeys are good and that everything keeps working and works well. So thank you very much for all your efforts so far, because Opia would not be possible without all the wonderful stuff that you all are doing. in order to to make the site function and to make it possible for people to create lessons and learn from lessons. If you want to help with any of the above, you can email this at admin@oppia.org, or you can just talk to me. That totally works. So with that, let me pass it on to Xinyu, who is now going to talk a little bit about making explorations effective and our efforts to do that, because that's a core part of our mission.
Of course. Thanks, Sean. So okay. So we're currently at a stage where we have many explorations, and we want to have a way where we can gauge the quality of these, so that creators can get feedback on how good explorations are, and so we can decide whether some exploration is teaching a skill better than another. And we want to do this in a very objective way, because we have limited manpower to assess explorations to see is this one really better than the other one, and it's also a very subjective kind of process. So we want to make this objective, and in order to do that, we really some sort of system where we can see what skills a student has learned through playing an exploration. So this kind of fits into our current collection system, because the collection system is organized around skills, and in the collection, each exploration is meant to teach a certain skill, and these skills all fit together to teach a bigger skill. So for example, in the fractions collection, there might be a exploration that teaches how to add fractions. There will be one that teaches the equivalence of fractions finding the lowest form of a fraction. And these are all important when you these to do things like, say, when you're trying to follow a recipe and you want to teach a student how to use these skills together. And so what we need is so what we want to do is at the start and end of explorations collection, we want to have a pre-test and a post-test, so that students so that we can see how effective these explorations are. And the benefit of doing it in this way is so that we make this as automated as possible. So when we have a collection and some explorations inside, it will be possible for us to, say, swap out an exploration to put in a different exploration that teaches the same skills, and we can see whether this exploration performs better than the other exploration on teaching these skills. And then based on these, we can have this system where the collection has a default exploration, and creators can suggest new explorations to put inside the collection creators can suggest new explorations to put inside the collection. And this is in a way we're iterating on collections, but we're doing this in a way that doesn't need much moderator oversight, because the effectiveness of the explorations within the collections are determined by by this technical system. So yeah, let me okay, there was supposed to be some graphics there, but never mind. Let me explain a bit more about how this system is going to work technically. We're going to have a new type of interaction that's called a question instead of an exploration. So what a question is that it's a one state. It's a bit like a one state exploration, except it's like it accesses a skill instead of it teaches what like a big thing. So we're going to be able to string together a bunch of questions at the start and end of explorations, and these will be the things that we use to access how much students have learned through the exploration. So these questions are we're going to be able to randomize the questions in ways that like we can put parameters in questions, and then so like we can generate many questions from what the creator has inputted. And also because these questions are all like self-contained, we can make these into a sort of dynamic exploration where students when we have like a dynamic exploration, there are variable number of questions, so we can something that branches off of the assessing whether the assessing students part is also like we'll use the same system to create practice sessions, so students are able to practice skills. And so based on the dynamic the dynamic explorations mean that students will be able to the dynamic explorations mean that the students can do things like the creators have the flexibility to do things like specify that students need to solve at least X questions before the practice session ends. So if students get like the first 10 questions on the practice session wrong, it will like extend the practice session, and it won't be like an exploration that ends after a set number of states. Yeah. So all this is kind of still in the works. There are design docs being written up about it. I think we can share them soon, and yeah, look for them in a bit.
That's you done?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you to Sean, indefatigable contributor. So now we go over to a question and answer session, which so far has the slight flaw that there are no questions. So we had the CUNY system, which does not seem to prove popular. So probably the easiest thing, just to keep everything nice and lightweight and not have to do voting or anything, is just any questions you have, you can ask them in the YouTube channel chat or in the Gitter chat, and then I'll read them out and we will answer them. So you're welcome to ask about any of the stuff that was covered today, or really just any questions you have about Oppia or about life, but probably Oppia is better. Okay. So we can wrap up early. That's not a problem at all. If no one has any questions, I'm not going to force you to sit here for 25 minutes out of spite. Yeah, Sean, anything else you wanted to say?
Surely people have questions. That was a lot of information.
You would think.
If you have a question and are still trying to think about how to... okay, we have a question. Can you give more info on the machine learning project? Excellent. Yes, I can, but just a sec. Because the machine learning project is being led by Anmo, so I just actually pinged him and asked if he wanted to give a quick overview. But, or rather, I asked if he's around because the next a quick overview. But in the meantime, let me give a quick overview. Firstly, I'm having a little bit of trouble with this, with Jitsi. Can you still see me? I can't seem to get out of the screen share.
You're not supposed to be the one asking questions, Sean.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's the first question. Can you see me? Okay, well, I guess it doesn't matter if you can't see me. So one of the things we are doing with machine learning is we are trying to, rather one of the things we're doing with RPA, let me step back a bit. One of the things we're doing with RPA is to make sure that we can give students responses that are useful for them, right? If they get something wrong, if they get a question wrong, we want to guide their thinking in the right direction. And we want to sort of try and help them identify, any misconceptions they already have, because being aware of something is a great way to, recognize it and get out of it. And you can do this reasonably well with things like if the answer is a number, for example, because you can recognize particular numbers that correspond to specific mistakes. For example, like if you wanted to add 68 and 24, if the student gives 82, this is almost certainly an issue with them not carrying the 1. And so you can identify specific mistakes, based on classroom experience and teaching experience and things like that. And possibly based on follow-up questions that you may ask the students, like, why do you think the answer is 82? However, this is difficult to do for free text answers and for code answers, where the range of possible answers that a student can give is quite large. And so one of the ways this is by bringing machine learning into the system. Because if we were to do something like, if the answer contains token X, and if the answer does not contain word Y, and if the answer contains this and this in this order, that is basically an impossible set of rules to write. You need something that can learn statistically on the RPA side. And so the idea of the machine learning that we're bringing in is, if you as a creator can classify answers into buckets and say that for this group of answers, I want to respond in this way to the student, right? Maybe this group of answers indicates that the student is approaching the problem in this particular way. Maybe this group of responses indicates that the student is, having the common issue where they think A is B or something. Then you can give responses that are appropriate. And then we've got a classifier that essentially partitions student answers into different response buckets based on the answer and what other answers it's sort of what training data it's kind of near to in the training space. And then based on that, we can give a response from RPA to a student's answer that we haven't seen before, but that's likely to be of use to the student. So anything that's better than just sorry, wrong, try again. So that's basically the outline of the machine learning project. Joshua, does that answer your question? And by the way, for those of you who are wondering where Joshua's question is, it is on Gitter. It's on the Gitter chat. So if you have got other questions, that's also an avenue where you can post it. Awesome. Glad to hear that. Anyone else? Okay.
Ah.
So, yep, go ahead, Jake.
Just have a new question. Let me read it out to you and then you can answer it. This is from Abraham. So, Sean, you mentioned that our mission is to make sure anyone can learn anything in an enjoyable way. Since we want to help anyone, are there any efforts being done in delivering our content to people who don't have access to computers or mobile devices? Perhaps giving the content to teachers to use directly in classrooms?
What I would say to that is there aren't efforts being done in that direction at the moment. Although there are two questions here, really. One question is students who just don't have access to computers. We aren't doing that yet because we don't know how to reach those students because they don't have devices and so they can't connect to the internet. But you mentioned a second scenario, which is giving the content to teachers and having them use it directly in classrooms. That is actually happening. It's just not entirely clear in some cases that the second thing is a solution to the first. For example, we are currently providing some lessons to a math teacher in a school in Chicago who is planning to use them with her students. However, I imagine that the students are likely to have some sort of internet access because they can play the lesson. If you're talking about a teacher presenting a lesson in the front of a classroom, then yes, that's absolutely a possible way to do things. You will lose some of the individual interactivity because when I was teaching in a classroom, I had 50 students. It was quite difficult to know which student had, which student, what each student was thinking, or what their mental models were, much less to try and help them, correct anything. And so such a solution does not necessarily scale to individual instruction because you can't have teachers for all the students. But I totally agree that in places where students don't have access to things, the best thing we can do is provide the best materials we can to teachers or other adults or parents or whoever can support these students. And hopefully, one of those latter audiences does have access to the internet and can access those materials. So the general answer is yes, this is part of our mission. No, we are not focusing on it directly at the moment. And yes, we are absolutely, we do want to work with teachers and help them, maximize the impact of classroom time as well. Because another example that I know is that we have a contributor from Turkey who wants to create lessons for initially wanted to create lessons for his students and is now interested as well in creating lessons for the teacher community in general. And the way they are used is he gets the students to play the lessons beforehand, and then in class time he goes over things like the common misconceptions and the issues where you really need someone live in front of you to handle. But it also means that teachers can get more done in a shorter space of time because to some extent the exploration or the online lessons can take care of it for them. That's a long answer to your question, and I don't know if it quite answers it head on. So please let us know. Was that useful? And if you have follow-up questions, please ask. We also continue to welcome other questions.
Yes, we have a slight lag between the speaking and YouTube presenting, but I think we should have gone through our round trip time by now. Yes. Abraham says, thanks, that answers my question. I have learned other information about our efforts thread as well. So excellent.
Yay. Thank you.
Good job, Sean.
And yeah, we'd still be happy to answer any questions. I mean, one of the purposes of this meeting is that it's just so that, people know in general what other people are doing and what the project as a whole is doing. So a lot of this is probably new, actually, to many of you. So now's your time to ask about clarification and provide suggestions if you have any, if you see any flaws in the strategy, or if you have any ideas. So
yes, and just to reinforce, sort of on that note, and Sean mentioned earlier, if I mean not necessarily now, but if you have ideas or things you sort of think we should doing or would like us to change, then really do get in touch, because we're just sort of making it up as we go along, and can always benefit from new ideas.
all right. Well, we still welcome further questions on Gitter. So please post your question there if you'd like us to answer it. And if we don't hear anything in 2 minutes, then we'll probably stop.
We also welcome further questions on YouTube and on Q&A if you really want to go down that road at this point. We should have some diversionary music to play in the background.
Yeah, next week. Not next week. Next meeting.
Yeah. We don't want ball hands.
We could organize that.
Yeah.
Musical hands.
And then we can do the appalling American things and sort of make everyone get up and wave their hands in the air and things to show team solidarity.
Well, actually, so just describing the landscape from my point of view, I only see Jacob and Cindy, but I've got no idea who else is looking at this. So hello, everyone out there.
They are looking. It's okay. I have YouTube statistics. We're not talking.
But it's nice. It's nice to see people. Okay. Well, I guess if there are no more questions, then maybe we should call it a day. Let us know if you found this useful, because if you did, then we should do more of it in future, especially updates on the various different projects that other people are doing. And conversely, if you don't find it useful, then we should stop doing it. But yeah, thank you all for attending. And let us know anytime, like Jacob says, if you have any further questions or any suggestions, because all of us want to make education better. So improving that. If you have any ideas for improving that, we are absolutely all ears.
Yep. I play the role now, and then you speak to me. Hi, Sean. One thing that was mentioned was to attract more people by spreading the word around. Do we have a concrete plan for doing that? The more important question is what really is going to attract. So just to read out a couple more things, Arun remarks that we've added the footer displaying the names of authors to make them more discoverable, and we're looking into sort of more incentives like this. So that's on the online side to make people's work more visible, and that's definitely an important thing, encouraging contributions. So I think at this point we're out of time, so we'll not be able to take any more questions. So to repeat our goodbyes again, thank you to Zinyi, thank you to Sean, thank you to everyone for coming, and hopefully see you again soon. Bye.